Welcome back. It's 25th day of April. The World Health Organization has set this day aside as the World Malaria Day. Now, Nigeria is being said to account for 29% of the world malaria burden. We have in the studio with us a medical practitioner, Dr. Oluyemi Babalola. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, Dr. Babalola.
Good morning, ma'am.
Are we winning the war against malaria?
Well, that is an objective way of saying that. Well, I would say yes, because when you look at it, when you look at the statistics, the data, about 5-6 years ago, we are made to understand that 1 in every 8 seconds a child dies of malaria. But because of the preventive measure put in place and the new technology in malaria treatment, actually, I can say we are actually winning the war against malaria.
Okay, you talk about new technology in treating malaria or probably preventing malaria. Yeah. What are those technologies?
Of course, not really a new one. We are talking about ACT, artemisinin-based combination therapy. We are talking about the use of insecticide treated nets. We are talking about the use of preventive drugs like proguanil and some other things. So all these things put in place because before when malaria usually kill people, but with the use of ACT, artemisinin-based combination therapy, I think there is a great significant improvement.
I don't know if you've been following the trend when it comes to malaria. I had the opportunity to visit a health center, and I found 2 children whose mother said she wants to change the clinic because the malaria refuses to subside or probably wasn't going. And they've used all these drugs that you've said. And I was wondering, what's actually happening? Is it about the hospital or about the level of
let's put it
malaria
this way.
bite?
Yes, let's do it this way. It's not really the level of malaria bite. When you talk about malaria, it's a protozoan infection transmitted by female Anopheles mosquito. Let me try and break that down. Now, it's not a bacterial infection, it is a protozoan infection, and it is being transmitted by female Anopheles mosquito. And we have 4 types. It's not really the mosquito that causes the infection. It is what the mosquito puts into our body. What we call Plasmodium is a parasite. And we have 4 species, we have 4 types. One, we have the Plasmodium malariae. We have Plasmodium vivax, we have Plasmodium ovale, we have Plasmodium falciparum. Then let me talk about this Plasmodium falciparum. It's actually the severe form of malaria parasite. And of course, if you have been using ACT and you think you are not winning the game, you may have to change it to intravenous one, as in maybe probably put the child on malaria. But most of the mistake we people make is that there's something we call differentials. It will not actually be malaria, it could be other thing, because when you look at the signs and symptoms of malaria, it's quite similar to typhoid fever. So you may be treating malaria instead you may not know it's typhoid fever, and you may be treating typhoid fever not knowing it is malaria. But of course, we have tests, we have laboratory investigation a doctor can actually carry out to know the exact thing that is happening.
29% of the world malaria burden is being said to be accounted for by Nigeria. Now, does it mean we have the highest number of mosquitoes across the globe, or what does this mean?
The question you asked, actually, I will have to link it with our level of the health monitoring system, as in the kind of what I can call health hygiene. Our health hygiene system in Nigeria is actually poor, or let me say it's low. Now, 29%. This Nigeria as a whole, or let me say Africa, we are living in endemic zone. Endemic zone means we are living in a place where this malaria we're talking about is endemic. And of course, we are not helping the matter, especially in the rural setting. When you look at it now, this is the rainy season. And of course, the incidence of malaria is actually higher than the dry season, because during this time you have bushes around. During this time you have stagnant water that the mosquito can actually lay their eggs. So when you look at this thing, we have, and of course, if we are not doing anything about it, the prevalence will actually be high. So I want to agree with you on that the prevalence is high in Nigeria because of our level of hygiene in this country.
Okay, you're talking about the level of hygiene. Now, you did say that Nigeria as a country, we're winning the war against malaria. But you get to our health facilities, you see parents crying, saying malaria has taken the life of my words and all that. And here you are saying we are winning the war against malaria. It sounds ironical.
Okay, it is not. Now, when you look at the statistic I gave when I started, I said before, one in every 8 seconds a child dies of malaria. in every 8 seconds. Now, if you try and calculate that, now at least in every about 30 seconds to 1 minute, we have a child that dies of malaria. When you now compare 8 seconds to 30 seconds, of course, you know there's a significant difference. When in every 8 seconds, a child dies of malaria. I'm not saying it has actually come down, but when you look at the statistics, we actually win. Because the truth of the matter is this: there was a time, I think the Oyo State government, they distributed insecticide to everybody. But unfortunately, you will see some people, they will use that net, they will take that net to their farm to cover their crops. They will not use it, and in fact, some people that have it, some people they resell it, and in fact, on that net they said it's not meant for sale. But you see some people, they are still selling this thing because of the level of their property. They don't even know what the net is meant for. People that have it, they don't know how to use it. These are some of the problems we are having.
Okay. The World Malaria Day was set aside, April 25 was set aside by the World Health Organization. What is the objective of this day? What is it that WHO wanted to achieve by setting aside?
Yes, what they are trying to achieve is to eradicate malaria completely. When you get to some part of Europe, it's not that they don't have it, or US, Europe, United States. Of course, they have malaria, but it's not as common as this.
So is that possible?
Well, it is. It is possible, of course, but all hands must be on deck. Everybody has to come. The government is doing their part. I'm not trying to support the government that they are doing everything, but at least in their own way, they are trying. For them to have supplied insecticide treated and free of charge, it's for us. We people, we need to sensitize our people, and of course, our people, they need to know and they need to be educated on how to use these things. And of course, when you have malaria, it is very common. People, they try to engage themselves in self-medication. You have malaria, you use it, and of course, that tends to what we call drug resistance. By the time you are using a particular drug for a very long time, there's something they call receptor desensitization, or what we can call medically, we can call it tachyphylaxis. It means when you're using a particular drug for a very long time, it will not work again because your body system will have been used to it. And of course, you say, I'm using this, I have malaria, I use this, and it seems it's not working. It's because of drug resistance. So our advice are people, when they are sick, they should go and visit their doctor. To do malaria tests, it's not expensive. It's not expensive at all. They will do, and within 10-15 minutes, we have a rapid diagnostic test for malaria parasite. They will conduct the test, and the next 10-15 minutes, you get the result. And of course, we have the blood film, which can take like 1 or 2 hours. And I don't think that's too much. So I think all hands must be on deck if that will be eradicated, if malaria will be eradicated in this country. Okay,
we know that malaria is prevalent in our country, in Nigeria, but it appears to be that it has a variation when it comes to the region of the country. Is there something like that?
Yes, there is. You know, when I started, I said we have 4 species of this of Plasmodium falciparum, of Plasmodium. I said we have Plasmodium malariae, we have Plasmodium ovale, we have Plasmodium ferox, and we have Plasmodium falciparum. These are the 4 species. And of course, when you look at, especially in the north, that Plasmodium malariae, if it happens, you see, I don't think maybe you've ever seen it around here, where you see somebody that has malaria, we call it nephrotic syndrome. Nephrotic, you see the whole body that will swell up. It's not that common, but when you get to you see 1 or 2 cases there. So, but in our place here, of course, you can see a child convulsing. When you see a child convulsing, that's Plasmodium falciparum, which actually the most severe one. But we have other variants like the malariae that can cause the whole body. It can cause what we call nephrotic syndrome. The whole body will just swell up, and of course, it can affect the kidney. It can affect so many things. So we have variation in part of it.
Okay, so it's looking at malaria now. And of course, a mosquito, because this is what transmits of course, malaria to people. If you look at malaria, we talk about we talk about yellow fever, we talk about Zika virus, and of course we talk about malaria generally. And these are being transmitted by Nigeria, which is common here in Nigeria. I don't think we've had any reported case of Zika virus. Now, I'm taking this towards maternal and child health.
Okay.
Now, if you look at some of these things, we tell our pregnant women to take care of themselves while they are pregnant, so that they avoid the transmission of malaria to the fetus.
Okay, fine. Of course, there's something we call congenital malaria, but it's not that very common. Congenital malaria is when you give birth to a child and the child has malaria. It is not common at all, but it happens like 1 in 1,000. So, but usually a child that is not up to 4 months is not supposed to have malaria, because what they have is what we call a fetal hemoglobin. fetal hemoglobin does not support the growth of malaria parasites.
In the baby?
Yes, in the baby.
Outside the womb?
Of course, no, outside the womb. That's one of the mistakes. When a child of 2-3 months old is sick, or maybe he's having fever, malaria, he's having fever, temperature, they say, oh, it's malaria. Everything is not malaria.
That's exactly the point I would want us to address. Now, let's look at the symptoms of malaria. Most oftentimes than not, you see people, taking drugs. They call it drug abuse in medical parlance. You see people misusing drugs. Now, some persons will tell you, once I develop body temperature and all that, oh, the next thing that comes to mind is, let me treat myself for malaria. What are the symptoms of malaria?
Okay, fine. Let me start this. We have the symptoms, the signs and symptoms. One, we have fever. But that pattern of fever is different. It's what we call intermittent fever, or what we call on and off. Let me give you, this is how it is. Now, on and off, it means it comes and go. In malaria, that's what we call intermittent fever. You can have fever, maybe your temperature is about 38 degrees Celsius in the morning, and then before you know it, you are okay in the evening. Then the next day, the cycle is repeated, you're having fever again. That's intermittent, it comes and go. That's in malaria. Unlike in typhoid fever, that you have what we call persistent fever. So fever is like number one. Number two, you can have headache. Headache is part of the symptoms of malaria. But we have different types of headache. We have migraine headache, we have cluster, we have a lot. We have a race intercalated traumatic, post-traumatic headache. We have a lot. But that of headache in malaria is that of frontal. The frontal is here. You have a frontal headache. So aside that, we have a generalized body weakness. So you can feel weak, because when you look at the way the parasite works in our body, it attacks what we call red blood cells. And when it comes into your body, the first thing is that it goes into the liver, and from the liver it becomes merocyte, it goes into the blood, and when it enters the blood, it attacks what we call the red blood cells. We have white blood cell, we have platelet, but it attacks the red blood cells. And once the red blood cell is attacked, it breaks it down. And when your blood is being broken down, your PCV, the blood volume comes down, and you feel weak.
What's malaria parasite?
Well, malaria parasite is actually what causes malaria. It's not the mosquito. The parasite, when it gets into the blood, it transforms into so many things. For instance, let me give us the life cycle. When the mosquito bites us, what it will release into our blood system is what we call sporozoites. That sporozoite will not affect us. In fact, you may not even know, because the incubation period of malaria is between 10 to 14 days. So, but that sporozoite gets itself into the liver. In the liver, it will transform itself. It will take some days into what we call merocytes. I'm talking about the parasite now. Now, that merocyte will be released into the blood. And by the time it gets into the blood, the first thing it does is that it attacks the red blood cells. When your red blood cell is being attacked, you begin to feel weak. It will break it down. And by the time it releases some other things that will trigger the temperature, the part of the brain that controls the temperature is hypothalamus. Then it will release some signals, and of course the hypothalamus will be wondering what is happening. Then we begin to have fever, you begin to have headache and some other symptoms. So that parasite is actually what causes the infection, that causes malaria in our body, not the mosquito itself. Mosquito is just like an agent that transmits malaria, but the parasite is what causes the disease in our body.
Okay, if we look at malaria, like we are talking about the World Malaria Day today, and we talk about preventive measures, mosquito nets are being distributed by the government, other states, or the federal government, or the Society for Family Health. And we look at, we have been asked, or we have been told to use mosquito nets while we sleep. But at times you notice that mosquitoes do bite us even while we are out of bed.
Yes, let me now.
So how do we prevent mosquitoes around?
Okay. Let's do it this way. We have two types of mosquito. We have the day biting and the night biting mosquito. Okay,
is the day biting that?
Of course, we have day biting mosquito. You see around, but the one that's actually more dangerous is the night biting mosquito. And it's not every mosquito that bites you that will result into malaria. Now, I said that we, just like human being, we have male and female. In mosquito, we have male and female mosquito, but it is the female one that causes it. So if the male mosquito bites you, you may not even have any infection. You may just be going. And it's not as even that female is the one that is infected with that parasite we're talking about. It's the infected female Anopheles mosquito. I want us to take note of that. So anytime you have been bitten by the mosquito, that does not mean you're going to develop malaria. It does not really.
No, I'm just asking how to prevent malaria from coming into the house. Of
course. Well, we apart from using net, insecticide treated net, especially in endemic areas, especially for the farmers or people living in endemic area where mosquito is very common. So we have to say you can wear socks. especially during the night when you want to sleep. Apart from using your net, you can use you can wear socks. And of course, even there are some people people that by the time they have malaria, they are down. So for those category of people, we use preventive drugs for them. We give them. There are a particular set of people that we give drugs because when they have malaria, they're actually down. Like the pregnant women, like the HBS sickle cell patients, and of course there are some children that will always give this as well. So for this kind of people, apart from using nets, so we give them drugs, and of course we teach them some other things. And of course, one of the mistakes people make is that when they are taking anti-malaria drugs, they take what we call blood tonic, which is very wrong. So because the blood tonic you are taking, you have iron in the blood tonic, and of course the research has actually shown us that iron supports the growth of the malaria parasite in your body, so it will allow that the parasite to thrive. So it's not always advisable that when you are taking malaria, you take a blood tonic.
It takes how many days after a mosquito sting, before you begin to develop symptoms?
10 to 14 days. Between 10 and 14 days. That's why I was trying to explain that it's not on the very day you are being bitten by mosquito that of course you will develop malaria. It takes the incubation period between the time the mosquito releases that sporozoite into your body, at the time you develop what we call the signs and symptoms, as you say, is what we call incubation period, and it takes approximately 10 to 14 days. That's like 10 to 2 weeks.
At what point does malaria kill?
Wow, malaria, just like what I said, if it is untreated, especially as if it is caused by what we call the Plasmodium falciparum, that I say is the most severe form of the Plasmodium species, it can kill because it affects virtually all the organs of the body. There are some organs we call vital organs of the body, like the brain. It can affect the brain, it can affect the kidney. So malaria can kill if it is not treated. So we don't even have a specific point, but if you have malaria and it's not being treated properly, so it can kill.
Let's look at funding. Do you think the government is doing enough, both at the state level and at the federal level? Do you think government across board are doing enough to eradicate?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, I may not be able to answer that question correctly, but with the little I know, I'm not an ESCO of NME or MDCN, so, and I'm not, of course, I'm not at the federal level, but what I know is that there are some things that are being, the WHO is supporting, apart from what the government is doing. Part of what the government is doing is, the insecticide treated nets they're giving, and they are giving out free. No, but aside that, there are other things they are doing. But when you look at our budget this year, when you look at the health sector, I don't think it does not really. When you look at the funding, the funding for the health sector, and of course compared to other things, well, I don't think the government is doing well about that. But of course, to the best of my knowledge, of course, giving out the insecticide treated and some other things they are doing, especially in government hospitals, I think they are trying.
Okay, so I know many people will tell you that they don't like to sleep under the mosquito net.
Definitely, it happens even in the hospital.
Because it looks like they're being covered.
No, I don't want your net.
Okay, but the awareness, is to sensitize people, or what we're doing is to sensitize
people. It's not only mosquito nets. Of course, we have some insecticides, of course, that you can actually flit in your
how effective are some of our insecticides?
Very effective. Now, some will tell you that you are not supposed to inhale it. That, of course, you have to give it some specific time, like about maybe 10 to 20 minutes, of course, because it's not good for us. But they are doing some insecticide now that if you inflict it in your room or your house, it will not actually affect you. It will affect the parasite, the mosquito, and not you. So, but we have some that, of course, in their leaflet, they will tell you you can leave the room for like 10 to 20 minutes before it comes back again.
Is the net itself harmful? The mosquito net, because you discover some persons will tell you, oh, I haven't slept on the mosquito net. There's this feeling on the skin, as if the feeling as if pepper is poured on their skin or something like that. And some persons are worried if this is harmful.
It is not. But the truth of the matter is that once you are giving insecticide, you are not supposed to use it immediately. And of course, and I think these are the things that people need to know. When you are giving insecticide, it is being protected with that insecticide is a chemical that is supposed to kill the mosquito, not you. And it's not supposed to harm you. But of course, the first day you are supposed to put it under the sun to sun dry it before you actually use it. But if you are able to do that, it is not harmful at all. It is not.
All right. A particular lawmaker did say that Nigeria needs about 420-something billion naira to fight the scourge of malaria. Do you think the money is on the high side, even when it is unrealistic? Though, do you think we require such a huge amount of money to fight malaria?
Let me digress a bit. When you look at everybody's talking about corruption in the country. Everybody's talking about corruption. Now, and when you look at our population now, I think the last one, if I'm right to say, we are now about 200 million in this country. So we're about 200 million now. So if looking at the money and of course, when you consider the fact that Nigeria is actually an endemic zone, I don't think the money is too much if corruption is not included, because of course it's one thing for government to release money, and some people at the helm of Avia, they will actually take the money.
The data you gave to us as to how fast malaria kills, you did say 1 in every 8 Nigerian children and all that. Is it applicable to Nigeria alone, or that is the practice all over the world? That's
the practice all over the world, but it's actually common. When you look at the statistics, when you look at where malaria killed their children, it's actually in Africa. And of course, Nigeria, we are one of them. So it happens here. When you get to big hospitals, of course, you see how malaria kills.
And so how come malaria kills an African child faster than an European child?
Because in that place, they are well educated. When your child is having fever, the next thing is that you should go to the hospital. They do that. But here, our people, they want to use herbal drugs. They want to give them paracetamol. They want to do this. And of course, when you look at some of the adverts on drugs, they say, if you use your drug after 2 days and the fever does not subside, see your doctor. But our people will not do that. So, of course, most of the time, there's something we call late presentation. By the time they get to the hospital, it's already too late. That's why.
Do you think we are doing well in terms of advocacy against malaria?
Well, we are not doing well enough. When you look at, I was discussing with a friend, when you look at this family planning, nearly all the radio stations, TV, you see them, of course. But this malaria, of course, because of the World Health Day, when you see yesterday, all over the news now. So you see some people going there. But of course, it shouldn't be only on World Malaria Day. It should be a continuous thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oluyemi Babalola, for sharing your thoughts with us on the program. Dr. Babalola is a medical practitioner. He's been sharing his thoughts with us on the sideline of the World Malaria Day. At this juncture, we're going to go on a short break. We'll be back with the second segment of the program. Don't go anywhere.